Good morning, or hello everyone, and welcome to another session of the online Kindle Bets Horn Camp experience. Our panelist for this session is Frank Lloyd, internationally renowned soloist, professor of horn at the Folkwang University of Arts in Essen, Germany. I'm your moderator, Chris Williams, staff member of KBHC and academist of the Karajan Academy of the Berlin Philharmonic. This session and all sessions are brought to you as part of the online KBHC experience, our gift to the horn community. In case this is your first time tuning in, please take a moment to familiarize yourself with the controls at the bottom of your Zoom window. You will see a couple of options, chat and Q&A. Please post any and all questions to the Q&A. As this is a Q&A session, please be advised that that's where I will be looking in order to ask Frank questions. You may upvote these questions by clicking on the thumbs up icon located directly below each question. Comments posted in the chat are affected by a drop-down menu that you can see there. They can be posted either to all panelists, Frank and myself, or all panelists and attendees, all of you guys. You may use either of these two settings. We just want you to be aware of who will see what you write. In addition, while we love reading your interactions and the growing community, please keep all conversation to the topic at hand. With that out of the way, I'll hand it over to you, Frank.
Thanks, Chris. Welcome everybody from around the world. We have 5:30 in the afternoon here in Essen, Germany, the same as Chris, who's about 5 hours drive to the northeast of me in Berlin. I hope you've all had a chance to get along to some of the great sessions we've had this week. And in fact, we've had more registrants for this week of the KBHC online experience than we could possibly fit into a real week. So I would encourage you to get along to the real thing and have an experience you won't forget. And you might even get invited along to a whiskey tasting evening, but that's just for the grown-ups. Chris, without further ado, let's take it away.
Yeah, so please guys, post all your questions in the Q&A. We would love to see more questions. I'll just go ahead and kick us off. Frank, what started you in your horn playing? Why did you pick the horn? What happened?
I didn't. I was a trombone player. My first experience was actually on the recorder at school, and then a friend of mine suggested that I join the brass band for the simple fact that there was a young lady called Tina who played the flugelhorn at the time. And he said, look, if you want to get to know Tina, then why didn't you join the brass band? And also on Friday afternoons, you can get our lessons. So that was great. I got into the brass band. Disappointed though that the only instrument left in the locker was a beaten up old trombone, because even then I wanted to use my fingers. I wanted to play the cornet or something. Anyway, I got into the brass band. Unfortunately for Tina, she had an accident in the school gymnasium and did not know what Tina did. So it was like, it was the end of her flugelhorn playing career. But anyway, by then I was playing the trombone, and it was our peripatetic brass teacher who used to visit our school every week on a Friday, who suggested that I join the Royal Marines, because a couple of his other students from another school in the brass band had joined the Marines and they thought it was great. So that inspired me to then have a go at that, because coming from Cornwall right down in the southwest of the UK, there was not a lot of opportunities than anything. So it seemed a good idea at the time. So anyway, I joined the Marines, and I was accepted, but they didn't have any more vacancies for trombone players. So they gave me a French horn and they said, play a scale, open one, open one, open one. And then they said, okay, you will play the horn. And that was when I was 16. I just turned 16. I won't tell you the year, you'll have to work it out. But that's how I started. Wow, that's how I started on the horn.
Gotcha. That's quite late compared to a lot of people. And yeah, wow. At 16, that's a little bit late compared to some of us, but it doesn't seem to have held you back any.
I think Herman Bauman was 17 or 18, wasn't he?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
So don't feel you have to start at 11, 12 years old. You don't. We hear some wonderful players at 11, 12 years old. They're getting younger and younger seemingly these days.
Suzuki for horn. Let's see here. Amanda Friedman has a question that I was also thinking of asking. What do you think helped you the most in the process of transitioning between a student and a working professional?
Well, I suppose I had that step between the both, because I was a student in the Royal Marines. I was never a student at that particular time. I became an adult student later. So, but I was 6 years in the Marines. So I learned all about horn playing. We finished our schooling in the Marines. And then at 22, I bought myself out of the Marines. I had to purchase myself out of the Marines because I'd signed on for a lifetime. So I had to buy myself out, which took a long process. I was 22 by the time I got out. And I got a place on a performance course at the Royal Academy of Music under Ivor James. And it all went very quick from then. I was there only a few months and I went for an audition and I got a job in the Scottish National Orchestra, and that was my very first professional position. I still had a lot to learn, and I had at that time still a lot of bad habits, a lot of pressure, and a lot of the bad habits that we know and we try to avoid or help our students to avoid. So I had to do things in reverse, really. I came to having to make the repairs at a later date as a professional, which is not advisable. It's good to get them all sorted out before you take the next step. But I mean, it all went too quick and I wasn't really in control of it myself. Other people were sort of pulling the strings at that time.
Okay. Great, thanks. That's a great answer. Let's see, we have another question. It's more of a practical horn playing question. Chelsea Nelson is saying she tuned into your performance for the faculty recital, was inspired, however, a little bit confused how you produce 3 simultaneous pitches. How are you doing 3 pitches at one time?
Aha, well, I'm pleased that you could actually hear the resultant overtone because on this medium, it's very difficult to pick up the finer points of the acoustic elements of playing. So when you sing together with a playing note, you will have a resultant overtone. And what happens if I play, for instance, a 4th harmonic, and I sing the 6th harmonic, but the resultant tone that I will get will be the addition of those 2 tones. So 6 and 4 will make 10, and I will get then the 10th harmonic sounding, which is the written E, which gives us a nice chord. Funnily enough, that works also on the B flat horn, even although the harmonics, if I sing a G, if I play a C on the B flat horn, that's a 3rd harmonic. If I sing the G, it's between the 4th and the 5th harmonic. If you all know your harmonics, you should know your harmonics. I'm sorry if I'm speaking over your heads, but quickly. So I'm just explaining how it works on both instruments. So if we got a resultant tone, which is 3 plus somewhere between 4 and 5, call it 5 minus 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We got a 9th harmonic on the B flat horn.
Right.
No, we've got 3. And then we got 4, I call it 5, 7, a higher 7. So the 7th harmonic on the B flat horn is going to be the E flat. But as we're in between, we pushed it up. So that pushes E flat up to the E natural, which results in the same note that we would get if we do it on the F horn, 6 and 4 making 10. So whatever note we play, whether on the B flat horn or on the F horn, and sing a note with it, the resultant tone will be the result of that one, and the result will be the same sounding. So some of them are more resonant than others. Right. And some less so. So it depends where you are in the register. The more resonant register is in the middle and low register. It's more difficult for the female voice to get in this low, more resonant area, but it still theoretically works the same if they sing an octave higher.
Nice. I never heard the harmonic series quite like that. The only one I'd ever heard is playing a major 6th. You can sometimes hear the 4th. For instance, when I play a low E flat, if I were to sing a C above that, the A flat comes out for me. I didn't know the other one.
Well, if I play a 4 and sing 6, I'll work up from 4, and it's a good way to start for you guys that want to start with multiphonics. To start with singing the same note that you're playing and move away from that rather than trying to come in on a different pitch, because initially, when you start practicing, the voice and the horn, the playing note, want to meet. They're always trying to get together. So by starting on the same note on the C and moving away with the voice, we can start that separation process. So Anyway, that's where you can start. And another tip would be is to, apart from this moving away, you could start playing the note and then singing the note with it, or singing the note first and then using that airstream to get the note started on the horn. This helps you get into that separation that you need from when you're singing a different note to what you're playing.
Nice, thank you. Let's see, we have another question here. I know you are a huge biker. In fact, I think you did a tour of Scotland, is that correct, recently?
Oh, yeah.
We have a question coming in about the importance of physical exercise for horn players. Can you just talk about that a little bit?
I think it's important for everybody because, and especially for horn players, as that's our life, and that's what we're talking about. We need really good concentration on the horn. We've got to have good ears, and we really have to concentrate. You know, some of the simple things can go wrong if you lose your concentration, and concentration is helped by having is being fit, basically, because when you're under a heavy workload, the fitter you are, the less your body is being weighed down with the extra workload, and coping with stressful situations. And like I said, with the concentration, has always been a great feeling. You know, being on top of things, you know, and not being stressed out and being weakened by the ongoing stress, the everyday stress of everyday life. As a London musician, you're flat out all the time. Keeping fit was very important. And in fact, there were times when we were on tour with the Philip Jones Brass Ensemble. I think there were 9 members of the group out of 10 were all going out jogging. The only one that wasn't was Philip. We were all getting out and all getting fit, and that's one of the greatest things about being on the road and touring. You've got your running kit, you've got your running shoes and your kit, and you can go out anywhere. So the first thing you look at is, where are we? Where's the nearest park? Where's the nearest river? And you know, the only times I've had to wrap up was running in Norway when it was 25 degrees centigrade, whatever that is. It's way down. And I had the whole gear. I had the balaclava and everything, and everything was frozen. In fact, it was so cold that when your breath condensation came up onto your eyelashes, they froze together momentarily. So your eyes would blink; they would stick together because they were frozen. I mean, that was amazing experiences like that. But it's taken us, and of course, I love the outdoors. That's why I love the horn camp so much. It's great to get out and about wherever you find yourself in the world at that particular time.
I did just a quick Google search here. It's about -13 Fahrenheit for all of you Americans out there. Let's see, we have a question regarding KBHC. Someone's asking, how did you become connected to the Kendall Betts Horn Camp?
I've known Kendall for many years at various International and Horn Society workshops, and he'd often asked me whether I'd like to come along. And of course, I was always open for it. I said, yes, it would be great, because I had this imagination. Horn camp, I've heard such a lot about the KBHC. I want to get, all I need is an invitation, but it never happened. It never happened in Kendall's time. So I was delighted when Bernard invited me the first time. Unfortunately, Kendall had already passed away by then, but then I was delighted to eventually be asked to come along the camp and see the wonderful setting of Ogons, and to meet the team, and to become a team player and a team member, and to enjoy what Ogons and the White Mountains of New Hampshire have to offer.
Yeah, for sure. It's such a beautiful place down there. It's such a great place to do a lot of great teaching. Along that line, I'm sure teaching for you nowadays is a bit different. So what are some things that have helped you to effectively teach over the internet?
Well, you know, over the internet is difficult. It's difficult for the simple fact that you're not getting the live contact for a start, and it's very difficult with the latency and with the sound and the quality. So a lot of the finer points of the playing, you don't pick up. And it's difficult enough when you get through the latency, you get a delay, and the synchronization is out. But when you get like a traffic jam of notes, and it stops for a while, and then the the portal gets opened and everything comes out at once. So suddenly they're playing 3 times as fast than one particular phrase. And then it slows down again to the tempo they're actually playing. And it's just impossible at times. But in these particularly very difficult times, with what this COVID-19 has brought on to us now, the necessity to have to do things online and with social distancing, and the way this has devastated the music industry, I mean, we've got to pick ourselves off the floor at some point along the way and try and put back this business together, because there are many, many orchestras that are suffering, and some unfortunately won't survive this.
Yeah, very true. It's an very interesting time to be a musician. Let's see here. We have another question coming in about horn playing. How do you think about intentionally creating different colors in your sound? I know when you worked with me, we worked on this a lot over in Essen, and yeah, I'm just curious how you approach that.
I don't think it's something we can just turn on and off. I think we adjust to the sound with it. And I remember some people telling me before, when I played with a particular player who had a darker sound, that I was matching well to the dark. I wasn't doing that consciously, maybe subconsciously, but I wasn't doing it consciously changing my time. We endeavor to produce the best sound we can make. Whether we can just change that sound is I remember the trumpet playing in an orchestra, and it was always way too loud, and the conductor said, you know, it's way too loud there. Can you? The sound is too harsh. And the trumpet player stood up and he said, I haven't got a tone control in this. I blow in one end, and what you get is what comes out. So basically, we blow in one end, and what comes out. We're trying. If we get the technique right, then we will make the best sound that we can make physiologically, which is different for all of us, but we've got to get that right. And I think changing the tone, something it might mean, and some players certainly did. I mean, Herman Baumann changed his instrument when he came across to the States to get more of a beefy sound, something that's more acceptable or more usual over there. And some people change mouthpieces to get maybe a different sound depending on whether they're playing in a chamber group or a chamber orchestra even, or a big symphony orchestra. They might certainly have different instruments and even different mouthpieces to achieve that differentiation, or they want to be able to match better. I personally don't change an instrument or mouthpiece, and I'm endeavoring to get as warm a sound as I can produce on this instrument. And this instrument for me is still relatively new, considering I've been playing for over 50 years. 2 years on an instrument isn't very long, so it takes, especially as a new instrument, it takes a while. So it's a new thing, and it's encouraging and motivating to keep on practicing and everything. But that would be my philosophy. We're producing. I don't think you can just change the tone. It's you know, you would be doing something, compromising something to change the sound in some way. And I think you would have to change the equipment, and not some way that you would blow, because we're trying to produce the best sound we can, and that only works with one particular way of blowing, and that's using that air efficiently and supporting correctly and getting that warm, thick air that we talk about a lot. That is absolutely paramount. We can't change that to suddenly change the sound for something else. So we haven't got, like trumpet player, I haven't got a tone control.
Nice. We have a few questions here coming in, both about your low register and about your high register. People are asking, how the heck do you play well in both the low and the high? Do you have any quick fixes?
It was very interesting, because years and years ago I was playing a recital in Germany. And in Germany, as you know, it's still very much, are you a high horn player or a low horn player? Very differentiated. You go to an audition, it's either going to be a high horn or a low horn. And if it's a Wechsels horn, a changing position, then you might have one concerto, maybe Strauss one bit, and then you'd have the bagatelle or something, and then for the low part, so you'd be tested on both. But still very. And I came off the platform after this recital, and one of the teachers, one of the German profs, came up to me and said, "How can you play so well low?" I said, "Well, I practice in the low register. I mean, this is the horn has got four plus octaves. If you want to be a horn player, then you've got to practice the whole instrument and not just neglect one part of it. Having said that, however, if you have a propensity or a particular strength in one register, then yes, you've got to take that further. If you want to be a low horn player, then you've got to really concentrate on that side primarily, maybe changing the equipment slightly to get more of an open sound in the low register. Likewise for the high horn, if you're spending all your life in the upper register, then, and it's got to be easy. It can't be hard work. You'll never do it day in, day out. And that might mean a change in that area, mouthpiece or whatever. So it's practicing all the range of the instrument and developing that and then finding the equipment and the mouthpiece where it works. So you have a compromise. You can't have something which is better in the high register and doesn't really work very well in the low register. So you've got to have a middle of the road mouthpiece which doesn't compromise any one particular register.
Yeah, it's very important to spend a lot of time in the registers that you want to get better at. Here's a good question from Kyle Schober. Was there any particular event or thing that you did that you credit with advancing your horn playing significantly?
I think a horn playing generally, getting better as a horn player is doing it, and it's experience. Whether there's one event that I can put down to making my horn playing better, I couldn't say, because it's been a process. As I said, I started with a lot of bad habits and I had to sort them out in the job. And it was very difficult because, as I've learned since then, and you've probably all learned at college and at school, if you've got a small problem now and you leave college or you graduate with this small problem, in 5-10 years, it's going to be a big problem. It might not be very much now, and students, unfortunately, are really good at sweeping something under the carpet that might be really difficult or awkward or a really sticky note, or the weakness there is in the change in the embouchure, and not really concentrate on that. Later on, that is going to become a huge issue. And I was dealing with this after about 3 years in the symphony orchestra. I realized that the problems that I had, which were from before, which I took with me, were right down to the basics. The lack of the support, the lack of the airflow, too much pressure, all these things were becoming issues now 4.5 years into the job. And it was by leaving the orchestra and actually becoming a third horn player in the London orchestra gave me the chance to start working at the problems that I'd had, because then you're not always on the spot as I was as a principal horn in the orchestra. So it was all back to front. I was doing things that I should have done at college, but because things, like I said, I was late into college and things moved very quickly and I never got to grips with them in the Marines. See, I could always play flashy stuff and it got me through auditions and things, but no one actually took me back to basics. And we know that the basics are the absolutely fundamental and the fundamental that we have to get right. If we don't get that right, we will never achieve our full potential as a player. We really have to get that right, and that's more important than anything else. So I can't say that there was one particular thing. There were moments of realization that why is this so hard? I'm doing it wrong. And that was a realization of then I've got to do some work. I've got to get something right, and I've got to change the environment to enable myself to get to work on these problems and to open that door, because it was becoming an absolute cul-de-sac. It was not going to keep going the way I was.
Yeah. Fundamentals are very important. It must have been someone from Britain. They told me that fundamentals are both fun, and without them you'll be mental. And that always kind of stuck with me. It seems like you might have ascribed to a certain amount of that as well. Oh, speaking of, you mentioned that you are always good at the flashy stuff. You always play fast. We have a question. Can you talk about what maybe you're doing with your mouth, or maybe what you're thinking about as you go through these really difficult passages on the horn?
I was fortunate in a way that I never really had to work to build up a technique. I think maybe it came from coming from the brass band, where it was all very technical, and just about the first thing I ever learned to play was how to triple tongue, because there were guys much older than me. I was 12, 13 in the brass band, and they were triple tongue. How'd you do that? How'd you do it? So I'm going. on the other side, it made me a terrible single tongue player. I could do all the other stuff, but I couldn't single tongue at all because I'd always gone I'm not I couldn't do it, you know. So again, I had to do that in reverse and learn single tongue at a much later date. So working with the technical stuff, I was always doing technical stuff right from the very beginning. And the fingers, even before I'd played a valve instrument, I wanted to use my fingers. I never knew that they were going to be quick. I wanted to play the cornet. I wanted the fingers, and so the trombone was not getting. You know, so when I became a French horn player, I said to myself, well, at least I got valves now. They might be the left hand, okay, but I can get around that. But at least I got valves, so I could then go the way I wanted to go. Is be very technical. What I was lacking back then was the quality of sound and the airflow, which made it worthwhile listening to. Back then, it was a lot of flash and not a lot else. It was lacking in body and sound and everything else because I just didn't have that technique right. I could blow out and flash around and make lots of dazzling stuff, but I mean, it wasn't really very high quality stuff in those days. So I've come full circle, you know. I've got down to the basics and now realize what I should have had back then to make it more interesting. But and that's why I thought it was about time to do a CD like the No Limits and say, okay, let's do that now when I've got this technique a lot better than I had back then. I wouldn't have liked to hear what it was like back then. Okay, it might have been I wouldn't know. So I think that's what inspired me to do this CD and to do some of these pieces which I've been playing for many years, you know, as encores and as
yeah, I mean,
pieces.
They're very fun pieces. A little bit tricky, I have to say. Flight of the Bumblebee might be a little bit out of my I don't know, price range of ability, but certainly very
funny enough. I touched base last year in that I registered and went onto a brass band course, and people asking me, how is it then playing the right hand? I played the tenor horn. Obviously, I didn't go with the trombone, the mouthpiece. So the closest thing I'd have was an adapter for the tenor horn with my French horn mouthpiece. It's not perfect, but it's okay. But although the right hand is never played anything because the trombone was not, and then the French horn was left. So I'd never used it, but because the valves are so light with that single up and down action with the light spring, we did Chardas at this little course, and it was fine because the thing is that there's no effort. You try and play the valves on the French horn with the right hand, and you see how heavy they are.
Yeah.
Back to that flight of the Bumblebee. The flight of the Bumblebee was a nightmare on the session because you don't do it once. In an encore, you do it once, and it's 3 minutes, and it goes 2 minutes, and it's over. But when you've got to do it again and again and again, your fingers I get so tired they just seize up, or they're just playing. They end up playing just rubbish, and I couldn't get through that in one go. I mean, it was so just for the simple fact they're working so hard just to get the valves down, because there's a lot more linkage through the string and the rotary system. They are at least twice as much work as it is on a normal piston valve. So that's very, very much easier. It's in fact an absolute doddle with the technical stuff on the thing, on the tenor or the cornet. So it's really very much harder work on this.
Back to the talk about your physical fitness and the importance of having hand strength, I suppose. Oh, we have a question here. You've mentioned playing the trombone and you've mentioned playing the tenor horn. Do you have a favorite instrument besides obviously the horn?
That is my instrument. That's what has become my whole life. And now, as I said, starting playing a new instrument, it's a new incentive and a new motivation and a new sound. So I'm learning the whole repertoire all over again. Not that I've been that busy in the last few weeks. In fact, I've taken up another instrument.
Oh?
Not the piano. I'd always thought, oh, piano, but no, guitar. I always wanted to play the guitar, or it was always one kicking around, but I never actually got to grips with it. So I've actually started practicing it, and I've already got harder fingertips already.
Oh, nice.
So I'm thinking, well, maybe the left hand would be okay because my left hand is my left hand, you know, so maybe that would be okay. But you've got to get your hand in positions that they've never ever been in before.
Yeah.
And you're breaking your fingers to get in positions, which how can you do that? And I suppose some way it's like looking at me playing the French horn and people asking, well, how can you do that? It's just a case of practicing and possibly eventually getting it. I might be too old to start with my arthritic fingers. It might be too late for all this, but at least it's given me an interest in something new to learn, especially in this lockdown time when we're spending a lot of time at home.
Yeah, lots of time. I never picked up the guitar, but my wife always had a ukulele lying around, so I've started playing ukulele some.
Both Rachel's children are learning the ukulele, so we've got quite a lot of ukulele going on at the moment.
Well, here's another interesting teaching topic question. Do you find that you have one piece of advice or one instruction that you repeat to your students over and over, to all of your students? Do you say one thing over and over?
Be your best teacher, because by recognizing when it's not optimal or not sounding right, by recognizing that and knowing what to do to repair it will get you a lot further, a lot quicker. For the simple fact that you spend more time as a student playing the horn on your own than you ever do with your teacher. So you can do an awful lot of work on your own if you recognize why things aren't working. There's always a reason why something doesn't work. Why is there crackle in the sound? Why is that note petering out before my air is over? Why did I crack that note? There's a reason for it. Did you get your support right? Did you get the coordination between your attack and releasing the air correctly? Many, many different things which have to come to play and be synchronized and focused to get things to work. If it works, the math is very simple. You got it right. If it's not working, then you haven't got the math right. But it's our job as teachers to help them understand why it's not working and to give them the tools of the trade they need to enable them to self-analyze and to know when it's wrong, why it's wrong, and how to correct it.
Yeah, very important to analyze your own practice as well as, you know, think about yourself as a teacher.
Yeah, I mean, quite often it's too much blinkered and it's input and not listening to what's happening and what's coming out the other end. For instance, if I played this. What am I hearing? I'm hearing a very splatty attack because I'm tugging between my teeth and my tongue. So I'm getting a very splatty attack. They say, well, that's the way it is because that's the way I'm taught to do it. Now let's find a position of the tongue where we get a cleaner attack. So let's take it out from behind, from between the teeth and put it a little bit higher. So instead of getting that splat attack, we get which you get if you stick the tongue between the teeth. Because what you're doing is disturbing that airflow, so it's not getting the lips are not getting the full stream of air from the very beginning. You're disturbing the front of that air. So they're complaining. The lips can only respond to what they get. If they don't get clean, warm air, they're going to try and do whatever the message they get. And if they're getting a disturbed message at the front end, that's why they're unclean. Splat, splat, splat. And that's one step towards cracking the note because it's already somewhat unstable. So we want to get to the middle of that note and experiment with where your tongue position has to be in certain registers. It changes depending what register you are. You know, it's going to be much more the down in the low pedal register than it is going to be in the top. Or we're going to get high to more do, da, 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 much more up to get a nice clean attack. It's great to have a beautiful attack on the horn. And if it's splat, 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 don't just take it for granted. Get it cleaned up and find the position of the tongue where we were releasing that air. Don't forget, every note we ever play is only going to respond to the airflow it gets. The tongue doesn't make the notes. The tongue releases the air, let the air do the job. If we disturb that air by sticking the tongue between the teeth before we even start, then you've got off to a rocky start. And that's why the notes sound like it does. So for instance, that's just one small element of recognizing when something is not optimal. That can be much cleaner. It doesn't matter whether it's the F horn. It's even more important to have a good airflow, because with the longer instrument, you've got to get that air moving quicker. Not quicker, but more solid. So you get the air started through the longer tubing on a clean attack. Otherwise, if you haven't got that right, then it's going to start with a blurry, messy attack.
Nice. Let's see here. We have a question regarding flexibility. I think before everyone joined in today, you were playing a couple of warm-up exercises. They were quite flexible. Do you have any specific exercises you use to build your flexibility?
There's very, very many exercises which I base on the F horn and the B flat horn. I usually go down on the F horn, starting in my weakest register, because that's always going to be the sticky area. I think we've all got most of us will have a changeover point, and that's usually our weak area. And that was certainly my weak area, which is very much right around the middle C. So all my practice usually starts around there, basing it on this C. So whether I do something like this, or and working down, and then if I did then I'd work up on the B flat horn. So in this way, I'm always getting back to my start point. So I might be working the chops more when I'm getting up in the rate, but I'm always coming back again. I work down, come back again. And I know through experience that once I've got this middle register working, I know that it's all going to work. If I've got a really particularly tough program in the upper register, it doesn't matter. Get this register working first, and I know that's going to be fine. And I know you learn through experience, oh, I've got to do a lot of work up here, and you get too tight, and then your middle register disappears. You've lost that flexibility in that middle register, and that makes everything difficult, because then you get even tighter than in the upper register. So that's where I would base a lot of my warm-ups on these F horn based exercises, based on very much along the Farkas lines, you know.
Yeah.
You can start as slow as you like. Just very gently getting nice smooth slurs, always thinking of what you're doing, making sure that you're supporting the airflow, keeping that nice and open, nice and warm. You've got a nice quality of the sound, and you've got a nice clean articulation and a warm controlled sound. So you get that right, and it should always be very easy. There should be no effort involved. And then you can extend these flexibilities. There's hundreds of them, so you can take them to the limit, going right up to the 12th harmonic. Will take you up to your high C on the B flat. There's also an interesting one, which is I call it the Neapolitan Shift. It's taken from the tuba flex study from Freud many years ago, and she gave me this study which a tuba player had given her, and it's a semitone shift. So I've actually got it here. If we can.
Yeah, you should just be able to share your screen and then pull up whatever you want.
No, I've had my.
It's okay if you can't find it. There's a great book by Freud that contains this exercise. I've heard it called Boodly.
But so you start with the semitone shift, and basically it's like this. So you take that down, semitone at a time. Your next semitone shift would be B and C. And you work all the way down. Then up on the B flat horn. And then what I do then is add a third each time. So it builds up. So you end up, then the next stage would be. And then it builds up. So the last one of this particular phase will take me up to the 12th harmonic.
And where did you? Sorry, where did you say you discovered this exercise? Was there a name for it?
Freudis.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So it was it's called tubiflex. They got it from a
tubiflexes, yeah.
I don't know, they got it tubiflex. But this is now taking it apart to what its basics are, the semitone shift, because that particular exercise is what would be much more advanced than what we're working at now. But then we do the triplets. Just on one stage. So that then goes over the whole range, down and up. And then we take that to the 12th harmonic. Down on the F horn and up on the B flat horn. For those of you that might not know your B flat horn very well, learn the B flat fingerings so you can play these exercises. And then the last one is the open arpeggio. Same thing, but this time it's the 3 notes of the arpeggio are then an open form split. And I tell you, those get really difficult on the low. A flat horn, C horn, 1 and 3 to the A flat. It is really difficult. You have to remember that pattern, otherwise they're flying all over the place. You know, we don't normally play that high and on the long horn. That's why it's a really good exercise to do.
Yeah, I love that exercise. This might be a good question to follow that. So I found when I was first learning those exercises that I was using a lot of mouthpiece pressure. How did you develop using less pressure? Was that a conscious thing you had to do, or?
It certainly was. And one thing I encourage my students to do is that when you're doing an exercise that might take you up into the upper register, take your finger off the hook and take your duck's foot off if you've got it, or your loop that your hand is in, take it off and put your hand on here. So you can't push. Think of using that air pressure and not any facial pressure. And so on. So by getting your finger off for a part of your practice session every day, you're going to learn how to use more the air pressure and not the safety first pressure here. That is destructive, and that will make it very, very difficult, if not impossible, to move forward. And I was struggling with that, and it's one of the things I didn't realize at the time, but it stemmed from being in the military, but in marching band, when you have to push it on your face just so you can march, right, and keep it in the same position. And then we're doing an orchestral season also in the Marines. We're doing an orchestral session, playing Tchaikovsky's, and so it just became a habit. And then afterwards, like I said, it all went very quick, and I found myself in an orchestra. I could still sort of play, but I mean, the technique was very bad, and I was forcing a lot, and that's just because of the restriction and the lack of freedom and a lot of pressure. And I might have got away with it at the time, but it wasn't going to hold me in good stead then for later, and that's why then I had to make some drastic changes.
Snuck up on you. That's also a good exercise for any high school or perhaps collegiate marching band players. If you're finding you're using a lot of pressure while you're in marching band, this is a great exercise to help relieve some of those tendencies as well.
Yeah, I know, and you can learn not just the quiet. That it's air pressure. If you've got your support right and you've got the space behind for that air, all you need to do is blow more. Faster air is going to be louder, and you're going to get louder if you've got the space for it. And you don't need any pressure to get much higher. That's here. Your up and down is going to be here. I know it. So you keep that air nice and thick and warm, and you will always have the freedom to play quietly and loudly if you've got your support in the right place and it's not coming up here, not restrictive up here, and you're not relying on this. The problem is when you're having to rely on the pressure. We might all use pressure sometimes in the middle of a Mahler symphony. We might be using some pressure, but it's that point when we're actually having to rely on it, which is, it's like having to rely on the tongue to start a note. Well, we should be able to release that air and produce the note. It's the air which is doing the job, not the tongue. And that's where, that tells me that the support is not correctly, because if we can get the support into the motor zone, which is down here, it should be very free. If we're not supporting, we try to control it from here. It has to be controlled from somewhere, and that compromises the air that we need to keep free and warm, and that's what brings the problems.
Yeah, great exercise to practice that. We do it every morning with Bernard and Jesse. That ho do do is a great tool for that. Looks like we have another question here from Isabella. They are asking, as someone who's going to study in the UK, how is the audition process different from in the UK, in the US, maybe Europe as well? How do the audition processes differ?
Not having auditioned in the UK for very many years, I wouldn't imagine for 1 minute that is very, very different. It's going to be pretty much the same sort of things. In Germany, as we know, Chris, it's pretty standard. You're going to get Strauss one. You know, there's really hardly a better piece than the first movement of Strauss one. You've got 5 or 6 minutes. You're showing everything. You're showing a bit of bravura with a forte, some good strong stuff. You've got a nice lyrical melody. You've got a few high notes, and you've got a quick thing at the end. That covers everything in about 5 minutes. It's great for that. And you've got a Mozart concerto. You'll have to play a Mozart concerto with 3 or 4. That shows a more of a lyrical side, control, nice sound, all these things. So these are standards which will be asked just about for every audition. Then you will possibly get, no, you won't get orchestral excerpts for a beginner. But the thing is to have pieces. If you're asked for a free choice piece, then choose something that's in contrast and will show what you're good at. You know, there's nothing better than showing than don't put yourself under pressure to play something that might work on a good day. Choose something that you can play really well, because you're going to have to do it under a lot of pressure. And although this other piece, I'd love to do that, but it might not work if I'm under a lot of pressure and all the rest of it, then it's better to choose something that you can play really well and do a good job. Much more impressive than trying to struggle through something that is a little bit too hard and then under pressure doesn't work.
Yeah,
I'll just in Europe, it's very much that. With your low horn audition, it would be Mozart 3 and the Bagatelle, Neuling. And for the high horn audition, it will be Strauss 1 and Mozart 4.
Yeah, so one thing, I know that I'm not Frank Lloyd, but Frank, did you ever audition in America?
No, sir. No.
No, sorry, I think I might be cutting out. Was that a no?
No, I never did.
No, you haven't. Okay, so having auditioned in both places, I will just add a couple of things. A lot of times in America, you won't get the chance to play with a pianist. In Germany, especially, you will always have an accompanist, and there's much more stress on solo playing here in Europe. Playing your solos, the Strauss and the Mozart, and less on the importance of excerpts, just to add to what Frank was saying.
And saying that, Chris, it is absolutely important that you get as much time as you can with a pianist as preparation, because it's a completely different feeling when you're having to play with an instrument as rigid and unforgiving as a piano. You have to go in that direction, and what you might be used to and sound, to all intents and purposes, sound wonderful on your own, suddenly it doesn't fit at all with what the piano is doing. So to get some time as much as you can with a pianist, because it's a discipline which you have to learn, and you have to learn that control that's required to adjust to the tempered intonation of the piano, and we just have to be able to adjust for that, and that only comes through doing some work with a pianist. If you turn up and have a pianist for the first time, then it's going to be really difficult, and it can really be very off-putting and make you a lot more nervous, because it's an environment you're just not used to, and the intonation is all different.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, intonation here is also different. I think everyone in America is playing at 440, and we were playing at 443, so be prepared to push in just a little bit. Let's see. Oh, Carrie Rexroth has a great question. Another KBHC staff member. She is asking, what pieces are you working on currently? Are you perhaps working towards another album, or just having fun?
In my head, I'd like to be working towards another album, but it would be getting repertoire. I'd actually started putting some stuff down on paper about getting some arrangements done for maybe a new album, but that's very much in the pipeline. And there's nothing actually that I'm practicing at the moment on the horn, other than, like I said, on this new instrument, any of the repertoire is different. So whether I can bash through any of the pieces that I played for many years, they're all that little bit different now. So that's fun. I'm enjoying that. I enjoy picking up the horn and just playing it. Whether I do a warm up or whatever, it's just yeah, that's I might not have played it for a while, and then yeah, it's nice. Just play for the fun of it.
Nice.
Especially when there's not been anything to work up for. Everything was cancelled, as we all know, and suddenly there's nothing in the book, and say, what is there to practice for? Do I start at the beginning of the album and work through the album and all of that? I've done that. Vern Reynolds, maybe I could learn a few more of the Vern Reynolds from memory.
Memory?
That would be... yeah,
here we are, all of us in the chat are trying to learn the first measure of one Vern Reynolds, and maybe I should learn it from memory.
Yeah, but when you've done them, for 25 years, it's like...
Yeah, okay.
You teach pieces. I remember when I first came, I had never taught the bagatelles to tell them. But you play it from memory now because you've taught it so many times that not that I ever would perform that piece, but you guys have to all the time.
I had a great question in mind and it just totally skipped. Let's see. At rehearsal, the horn section often gets fussed at about playing too loudly. How would you achieve playing pianissimo effectively and consistently?
That is one of the most important things to be able to do in your career, play quietly. Now, how do we play quietly? It's down to technique, and it's your quiet playing will suffer if you force with the loud playing, and you're pushing on here, and you're trying to make a lot of noise, and then you're going to damage your very fine muscles here, and you've got to get that. Get away from the pressure, which is damaging. The thing is about the quieter it gets, the more important that warm, thick air is. Because as the air gets slower with quiet, you need the more real estate. You need the movement of air as it gets slower. If you've compromised that airflow by squeezing in any way, there will be a point where there will just not be enough airflow to keep the lips vibrating. The lips, like I said, will only ever respond to what they're getting. If they're not getting enough of what they need for that particular tension you've got for that note, they will just stop. Or you will get crackle and air in the sound, and that's telling you, we're not getting enough up this end. So actually, rather than thinking, I've got to shut it down and make it narrower and thinner for the quiet notes, you've got to open it, because when the air gets slower you need more real estate. You need to keep that warmth in the sound. And when that's going really slow, then it's always got enough up this end. So contrary to what you might believe, is shutting it down. By shutting it down, you're going to compromise the very thing you need, which is thick, warm air. And don't forget that your thick, warm air, it's going to be slow for quiet, and it's going to be fast for loud. That's about it. If you keep that there, you will always have that available to you. Like for instance, if I'm going here, if and only if you get that balance right with the support and keeping that open, you will be able to continue that note. Aniente. Aniente is to nothing and to the end of the air. If you get to a situation where you've got air and no note, you've drifted off that focus and you're sending a message to the lips that they don't understand anymore. So they're not vibrating anymore for that particular tension of that note. They're not getting the required amount of air and the airspeed. So they won't do it. You might still have air in the sound. Now that's telling you I've moved off focus. And then, like I said earlier on, self-analyze, why? What was wrong? Because I forgot to support and I squeezed here and I pushed my tongue up, changes the airflow, compromises that warm, thick air. We get a mismatch at this end. So we moved off center, moved off focus. Your lips just will not vibrate anymore. You're not sending them the right message. So it's keeping that balance quiet, keep it nice and open and keep it supported, because if you're not supported, think about coughing, laughing, using this. So here is always free. If you've got always freedom here and here, then you will always have enough airflow, even when it gets really slow, to keep your lips vibrating in the most quietest. And the most difficult things you will all have to play will be quiet, not loud. So having this ability to play easily, quietly, on whatever you've played before, you know, if you've played through Heldenleben and you've blasted your way through it and you get to the last page, it's the first horn, and you can't play that last page, then it's end of story. You have to always have that ability to play quietly. So that's when we come to being efficient. And this efficiency of playing quietly, keeping the airstream thick and warm and slow and controlled, is also exactly what we need for loud. So like I just played, playing loud and quiet is the same thing, it's just more air. Your faster air is going to be louder, and because we're using the same room, we're not shutting it down, we're not compromising the very air we need to keep thick and warm all the time. If we maintain that, we will always have the full palette of colours and volume whenever we want it, but only if we get that right.
Yeah, support is very important. Would you say that it's even more so important for the high register?
Absolutely.
Like, for instance, in Ravel's Piano Concerto in G.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, it's essential for the whole time that we're in control. That's our motor, that's governing what we're doing with our fuel, how much we're giving, whether it's a lot of air and whether it's really slow. And also not getting into the habit of feeling you've got to compromise the air or squeeze something or push the tongue up in the upper register to get to the high notes. That's only now compromising something which we need to get out of the way and keep warm and thick. And it's only going to compromise not only the airflow, going to make it difficult to be quiet, and also you're going to cut down then your overtones and the quality of the sound, because you're closing down that resonance chamber which you've got here. So that is really important to keep it up. There is no physiological necessity to push the tongue up for the upper register. People do it, the professionals do it, but there is no physiological necessity to do it. You've got to get it here. This is what's producing, not anything else. So, thank you very much.
So Frank, I want to say thank you so much for this session. This is a fabulous session. Thank you so much for being open to answering questions. However, we have reached the end, sadly. So now I will just give you guys a rundown of the events. So immediately following this session, there is a group photo. This is a very special session, so if you would like to be immortalized in the Zoom gallery for eternity, please stop on by this afternoon at 2 p.m. Eastern. Sergeant's first class and J.G. Miller and Staff Sergeant Jennifer Kemp will be giving a session entitled Pro Tips and Pro Tricks, wearing many hats as a post-pandemic artist. Later this afternoon at 4 p.m., Paul Basler, professor of music at the University of Florida, where he teaches horn and composition, will give a session called Easy to Follow Musical Recipes for Composing Your Very Own Etudes. This evening at 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, we will have a green chair circle social hour, an open Q&A session featuring members of our KBHC faculty. Immediately following that, there will be a second group photo session. You do not have to attend that if you are going to this first one. It is not at all required. And finally, at 8:30 Eastern, we have a very special session titled The KBHC Experience at Camp Ogons, a detailed account of life at Camp Ogons. In the meantime, please subscribe to our YouTube page by searching for Kendall Betts Horn Camp. You can also find us on Facebook using @KBHornCamp and on Instagram using @official_KBHC. We encourage you to post to social media using the hashtag KBHC2020. Thank you guys so much for being in attendance, and I will see you all in just a moment.
Yeah, bye.